Welcome back to Good Sports for You, where we are talking about good sports for you. And today I'm going over some of my hottest takes for baseball as a whole. I'm going to be having a bold predictions video for 2026 coming out closer to the season. But right now we got hot takes that just include a little bit of everything about baseball. But before I hop into it, I'll remind you to like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate it so much. So the first take that I got is it's going to go from the coolest takes to the hottest takes, so stick around to the very end for my hottest takes, right? My first take is Shohei Ohtani is the greatest player to ever play the game of baseball, and it isn't particularly close. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that we've never seen somebody do what he does to his caliber, his hitting and his pitching. I mean, the one season that he didn't pitch, he casually had the only 50-50 season ever. He had two of the greatest games ever played, like independent of each other. One game when he was only hitting, he went 6 for 6 with 3 home runs, 2 doubles, 10 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, and 17 total bases, which is one of the highest in a single game ever. And then obviously in this year's playoffs, he had 6 innings pitched with no runs allowed, 10 strikeouts, and 3 for 3 with 3 home runs. You'll never see another player do that ever again. And we have never seen a player do that ever before. Everyone is like, oh, like he's the modern day Babe Ruth and everything like that. Babe Ruth wasn't pitching even close to the caliber that Shohei does. He wasn't running the bases nearly close to the caliber that Shohei is right now, right? I mean, the guy is such a complete player as a hitter that I think that his pitching often gets lost in the mix. He has a career 3 ERA. That's ace caliber stuff. He's received high-level Cy Young votes before. Like, it is not human what he does. He's led the NL in OPS twice in a row already, and then he led all of MLB in OPS plus the season before that. He's a 4-time MVP. I believe they've all been unanimous. And also, he gets it done in the postseason. He has a 940 OPS in the postseason. So, in my opinion, Shohei Ohtani is the greatest player to ever live, and like I said, it isn't even close, and I think that gap will only widen by the time he retires. My next take is that if you got suspended for steroids, you should not be in the Hall of Fame. But if you were never suspended for steroids and only suspected, you should be in the Hall of Fame. So guys like Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, even if they were confirmed steroid users, like Mark McGwire has come out and said, yes, I did take steroids, they should still be in the Hall of Fame if, you know, their stats and everything say that they're up to par. Because the MLB was able to profit so much and grow the game knowing that these guys were taking steroids. Like, anyone who looked at Barry Bonds could tell that he was taking steroids. There were all sorts of rumors and reports and everything like that. But you only started cracking down once you had already profited. But once you started cracking down, players should have also cracked down on their own usage, right? So guys like Alex Rodriguez, Manny Ramirez, or even more in the future, like a guy like Ryan Braun, none of those guys should be in the Hall of Fame because they knew what they were doing was wrong. They knew that they were going to get suspended if they were caught. Those, at that time, it was really against the rules. Back then, it was kind of like this murky gray area. So because MLB was able to profit so much and build their brand, they should allow those guys who built that brand up to be in the Hall of Fame. But the guys who it's like, you absolutely shouldn't have been doing it, can stay out. But at the same time, I also got another take about steroids as kind of a 2-in-1. Steroids do make your eye better. And I'm not talking about like the physical eye, I'm talking about your on-base percentage, the strike zone and stuff like that. And I've seen this take on social media before when people have like, yeah, but it doesn't change your contact and stuff like that. Yes, it does. Yes, it does, because it improves your bat speed. If you're improving your bat speed, right, you're gonna hit the ball harder. That is what is going to happen. Therefore, your batting average is going to increase. So batting average does jump significantly if you are taking steroids. And therefore, pitchers are going to pitch to you less in the zone. They're going to want to throw something that you can't hit. They're going to be throwing changeups in the dirt. They're going to be throwing a slider way low and away, right? Stuff like that. Therefore, your on-base percentage is going to go up. So it's going to look like you have way better plate discipline, even though the only thing that you're doing is just juicing yourself up so you're hitting the ball harder, so then pitchers are less likely to throw to you. This shouldn't be some mind-boggling thing where people are like, well, Barry Bonds, and he was able to walk so much. He walked so much because he was on steroids, because he could hit the ball a million miles, because he had 70 home runs in a single season. What pitcher would pitch to a guy who just set the single season record for home runs? They're gonna walk him, obviously. I don't doubt that he had an absolutely fantastic eye. Like, yes, those things do happen. But they're going to pitch to him less because he is juicing. So I need to get that out of the way. That's my next take. My next take also has to do with the Hall of Fame, and this is going to be, there should be more unanimous players voted into the Hall of Fame, and voters should have to explain why they didn't vote for each player that is elected that year. So this is specifically geared towards the writing committee. It's not geared toward the Veterans Committee or anything like that, just for people who are on the main ballot. And my point in that is, there are guys who are Hall of Famers and there are guys that aren't, and there are guys that are kind of in the weird between. I'm not the biggest Derek Jeter fan in the world. I do think that he's a little bit overrated. But when you look at his numbers, when you look at his stats, when you look at his accomplishments, you cannot tell me that that isn't a World Series resume. You cannot tell me that's not a World Series baseball reference page. So, to all the people who didn't vote for him, which there were only a couple, they should have to go and they should have to explain, I didn't vote for Derek Jeter because of X, Y, and Z. I think that'll make people have a lot more like legitimacy to their ballot. I don't need them to explain every player that they did vote for. I need them to explain the players that they didn't vote for. Because like a guy like Andruw Jones who got in this year, I think you could have a really reasonable argument. You could say, hey, I want to see more sustained success from people that are going to be in the Hall of Fame. Sure, Carlos Beltran, well, he was so involved with the Astros cheating scandal. Sure, I totally get that. But for a guy like Derek Jeter, how are you not voting him into the Hall of Fame? Or like Ken Griffey Jr., yes, he did fall off near the end, but you look at his resume, there is nothing there that doesn't say he should be in the Hall of Fame. We have one unanimous Hall of Famer, and that's Mariano Rivera. And I think that makes total sense why he's unanimous and why he's the only one that's unanimous, but there are more guys that are like that. Albert Pujols probably won't be unanimous because that's the way that it is, but you cannot tell me when you're looking at everything that Albert Pujols isn't a Hall of Famer. And it's a yes or no question for each one of these people. So if one person votes no for Albert Pujols, they should have to explain themselves in front of the whole entire public. My next take is going to be Jackie Robinson is the most underrated player ever. So this may be controversial because he is arguably the most famous baseball player of all time. He is for sure the most important baseball player of all time. The most important player in any sport, probably to American history. And for that reason, his baseball play gets overlooked. I think a lot of people just assume, yeah, he was a really good player, but look at all the things that he did for civil rights, which is so totally valid. All the things that he did for the civil rights movement matters so much more than our sport, right? And I totally agree. You look at the stats, though, you could make an argument that he's the best second baseman ever. Right? His WAR per 162, so like the total value that he would average in a single season of play, is second amongst Hall of Fame second basemen, only behind Rogers Hornsby. He is up there with the best of the best, but it doesn't get talked about enough. Like you look at those stats and you're like, wow, he was really, really good. But obviously because of all the incredible things that he did and for breaking the color barrier, obviously, he's going to get talked about more for his non-baseball related accomplishments, but the baseball accomplishments can go toe-to-toe with any Hall of Famer. I think he's a top 25 player, quite frankly, and I think that some people probably wouldn't even put them in his top 50. So I definitely think that he is the most underrated player ever for his playing abilities. My next take is that Rickey Henderson is the most valuable player of all time. While I said that Shohei is the greatest player, I'm arguing that Rickey Henderson is the most valuable. Yes, he has all the stats that you like to see. He has a lot of home runs as a leadoff hitter. He has a ton of hits. He has a great batting average. He has a great on-base percentage. He has solid slugging. But the steals, the 1,000 over 400 steals, right? That is so valuable and something that can't be measured because of what it does to the other pitcher. When you're pitching the ball and you're thinking, okay, I got Rickey Henderson on first base, you're not thinking about the batter at all. You are thinking about Rickey Henderson at first base and when he's going to steal second and then when he's going to steal third base. So when you're not focused on the batter, you're going to miss your spots. You're going to be more likely to pitch a fastball because you're thinking, well, if I pitch a changeup, if I pitch a curveball, that's just going to be more time for Rickey to advance, right? All of those things matter so much. And then suddenly, first base, you're not in scoring position, and also a double play could be turned on you, right? And then suddenly you're at second base, you eliminate the threat of the double play. So that's outs eliminated right there. And also you get into scoring position. So now a bloop single out to center field, instead of moving you from first to second, you could go second to home, right? All of those things matter so much, and they add on just runs and runs and runs, which is why I think that Rickey Henderson is the most valuable player of all time. My next take is going to be batting average is still extremely important. I think that we got lost in the shuffle, this idea of the 3 true outcomes, that basically you strike out, you walk, and you home run, and nothing else really matters. Batting average is still so important. Situational hitting is so important, right? I want a guy who can hit above 270. I don't want just a guy who swings for the fences every single time. When I have players on, I want a guy who can slap it around a little bit here or there, right? Like home runs are awesome. Home runs are great. But even a single is so much more valuable than a walk, right? Because if you're a walk, you're moving it from first to second or second to third or third to home, whatever it may be, depending on what you got. But like I said with Rickey Henderson, if you got a guy on first base and you slap a single, he can go first to third. If you got somebody on second with nobody on first, if you take a walk, you're not advancing the runner. If you slap a single, you can go second to third or even second to home. All of those things are so much more valuable than a walk. So on base percentage, I think is fantastic, but batting average is still super important because of those reasons, right? And then the exact same thing is true with a strikeout. There are such things as productive outs. A bunt is still valuable. If you strike out, you're not advancing the runner at all. If you lay down a bunt, if you hit a sacrifice fly, if you hit it deep into the outfield and a runner can advance, all of those things are more valuable than a strikeout. I'm like 3 true outcomes. I just don't think that it's particularly good for baseball. I want to see guys with high contact, and I still think it's an extremely valuable skill that gets overlooked. I mean, the Brewers, I love them. They were a very contact-oriented team. That's how they won almost 100 games. By slapping the ball around and doing what they do best. They didn't have a ton of home runs, and they still had the best record in the MLB. Yes, it didn't translate entirely to the postseason. I get that. But hitting the ball still matters. We saw that with the Blue Jays. They were able to get to the World Series by having a good, healthy mix of home runs and batting average. You saw a team like the Yankees that relied way too much on the home run ball, and suddenly they're out of the playoffs pretty quickly. Even the Dodgers, they still rely a lot on batting average. Freddie Freeman didn't have a great power season, but he's always there with his batting average. All of these players, like the Dodgers are a special case because they are such a complete team, but batting average really still matters, and I'm really tired of the narrative that it basically doesn't matter and that's an archaic stat. And my next take also kind of has to do with archaic stats, and my take is no one cares about FIP and no one should care about FIP. I couldn't care any less about your imaginary ERA. I genuinely could not. And for people who don't know, FIP is fielding independent pitching, and that basically means how good could a pitcher do if none of the fielders were involved. So it has a lot to do with strikeouts and walks and your ability to limit the home run ball. I do not care, and you shouldn't either, because this guy had a 3.5 FIP this season, but his ERA was 4.5, so he's so much more valuable than a guy whose ERA was 4, but his FIP was 4.5. You know what I care about at the end of the day? If my pitcher allows runs, because that's his job. I don't care how they're given up. I don't care in what way, shape, or form. I don't care if he struck out 10 guys in 5 innings when he gave up 5 runs versus a guy who struck out 3 guys, even allowed 7 hits, but he only allowed 2 runs over the course of those same 5 innings. Runs matter. A made-up stat, in my opinion, quite frankly, doesn't matter. And I get that it can be a good indicator of like how good a pitcher will do in the future. Like if their FIP was really low, but their ERA was high, like yes, they could have gotten unlucky and all those things. I get that it can be an indicator. But at the end of the season, I don't care. You have guys who consistently outperform their FIP. Like I was looking at it, Mark Burley was a guy that I checked. His FIP was always a good chunk higher than his actual ERA. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You know, a guy like Dylan Cease who signed this big old contract, his FIP is pretty consistently lower than his ERA. So I'm just wondering, at what point are you going to say, you know what, the FIP isn't working for Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease does a good job at striking out guys, but he gives up too much runs because at the end of the day, that's what baseball is about. It's about allowing runs and preventing runs. If you can't prevent runs, but your FIP is great, I genuinely could not care any less about the FIP whatsoever. My next take is that if you never finish top 10 in MVP voting or top 5 in Cy Young, I'll say, you shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Shout out to Jake from Talkin' Baseball. I heard him kind of throw this out here, and I kind of like it. Basically, the idea is, you mean to tell me you were never a top 5 player in the American League or the National League and you want to be in the Hall of Fame? I just don't see it. And as I went through Hall of Fame ballots, I went back like well over a decade. Maybe it was just a decade. I don't remember. And there wasn't a single guy who got into the Hall of Fame that didn't finish at least top 10 in MVP voting. Because the thing is, if you're a Hall of Famer, you should have at least one season that you really go off, that it really all clicks. Even if it's just one season where you prove like, hey, I am a top 5 player in the league. I am even a top 10 player in the league. I'm just saying I want to see a single digit next to your MVP voting if you think you should be in the Hall of Fame. Because you have some guys, and it's a bummer, this take for me, because I want Bobby Abreu to get in the Hall of Fame, but he never finished top 10 in MVP. But if you're a guy that's a Hall of Fame caliber guy, you should have put up a good enough season that anyone can look at your stats and say, yeah, he should have been top 10 in MVP this season, or he should be top 10 in MVP this season, right? So it's kind of a double-edged sword, because there are some guys that I'm like, oh, the analytics really like him. But how come you weren't able to string together a season where you were a consensus top 10 player in your league? Because the Hall of Fame is supposed to be reserved for the best of the best. And if you weren't a top 10 player in your league at any point in time, I don't think that you were the best of the best at your time. A lot of guys view Adrian Beltre as an accumulator because he played for so long. He racked up so many hits. He got so many home runs. And it seemed, especially in his later years, that he never had a season where you're like, wow, look at that season. Yeah. He's got a couple in there. He was on that Dodgers team, was it? Where he finished second in MVP and he just had an absolutely absurd season. These guys that are able to play for so long put together a season where they should be top 10 because they're supposed to be that good. If you're that talented to play for that long, to be considered in the Hall of Fame as an accumulator, you should have one season where you really put it all together. That's just my 2 cents. I got 2 takes left, and these are what I view as my hottest takes. My first one is going to be, if you take the greats of the past and put them in today's game, they would still thrive. Yes, they would need some time to get acclimated and everything like that. But my main point is, if you were to take Ted Williams, Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Josh Gibson, Jackie Robinson, all of these players, if you were to take them out of the past and you were to say, hey, I'm giving you a year to train up and study baseball, I think they would be just as good. Because the thing is, these guys are still ultra competitive athletes. Ted Williams was an ultra competitive athlete who was trying to get an advantage in every single way, shape, and form. That he's probably the one that's like the most documented. But like you have other guys, Babe Ruth doesn't do what he does if he isn't trying to be great. All of these players strive for greatness, and you still have the innate ability to hit a round ball with a round bat and square it up and do good. If you were to place Christy Mathewson in these pitching simulators where they are able to study all of these things, and if you can increase his grip to get a better spin on the ball, and if you were to do all those wacky arm things that they do to get stronger, he didn't have that equipment. I genuinely think that he would still be a top pitcher in today's league, right? Or like Ted Williams, if you were to put him in all of the incredible things that we had, if he had access to video equipment, are you kidding me? If he could study a pitcher beforehand and figure out how he was going to pitch him, you cannot tell me that man still wouldn't hit 350 at least. And I get, well, you didn't have guys who pitched 105 back then. I will give you that. But also, they weren't as strong because they didn't have the equipment. So, like, if you factor in all these things, my point is, like, if you were to plop them in, like, right away, yes, obviously they would struggle, right? I'm saying give them a year to adjust. Or even more so, if you were to take, like, child Ted Williams and he were to grow up his entire time, he would still be an MVP caliber player in today's league. That's what I think. And my final take, and my most controversial, is CC Sabathia should have entered the Hall of Fame as a Milwaukee Brewer. Yes, he spent very little time with the Milwaukee Brewers. He only pitched in 17 games. And yes, when I came up with this, I thought, you know what, this is crazy, and I don't really believe it. And then I looked at the stats, and you know what, I do believe it. I do believe it. Because in those 17 games, he pitched the best baseball he had ever pitched in his entire life. You know, in his Cy Young season, he had an ERA of 3.21. When he pitched his 17 games for the Milwaukee Brewers, he had an ERA of 1.65. He pitched 7 complete games in that span, which, mind you, led to the entire MLB, and he only pitched for the Brewers for half a season. He finished 6th in MVP voting in the National League, and he only pitched in there for half a season, right? He had 11 wins in those 17 games. He had 128 strikeouts. He had an ERA plus of 2.55. It was without a doubt the best stretch in his entire career. And when you take away his stats with the Brewers, I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer. You take away those 11 wins, he's below the 250 threshold, which was a big benchmark for him. If you take away his 128 strikeouts, he's below 3,000 strikeouts. If you take out his 4.9 WAR, he's well below 50 WAR. 60 WAR, my apologies. And if you were to take out his ERA jumps significantly. And then you're looking at it and you're saying, well, is a guy with less than 3,000 strikeouts who has an ERA plus about like 114, 113-ish, so he's only 13 to 14% better than league average, and an ERA that's looking more like a 380 to a 374 with less than 250 wins. Is this guy a Hall of Famer? I don't know. I think that's up for debate. But no matter how you slice it, that half a season with the Brewers was so pivotal for his career. And that helped him get paid big time by the Yankees and have him pull off a couple of really good seasons with the Yankees. Yes, I understand he started his career with Cleveland. Yes, I understand that he spent the majority of his career with the New York Yankees. But that season, that half a season with the Milwaukee Brewers, was so pivotal for his entire career and for the entire Milwaukee Brewers franchise. And he was so good, and those stats matter so much for his career, cumulative stats, that I would argue that he should be in the Hall of Fame as a Milwaukee Brewer, because that is when he pitched his absolute best baseball. But that is all the takes that I have for you. Make sure to leave your thoughts and comments on all my takes in the comment section down below. I know I had some ones that were kind of cool takes, and then I had some that I thought were pretty hot, pretty spicy. Make sure to also leave some of your hot takes in the comment section down below. Maybe I'll do a react video, once I have some more subscribers who all comment. But I appreciate you guys watching so much. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all those things, and I'm out. Peace.